Good evening, everyone, and welcome to another edition of Awaken the World. It is 6 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. It is the 7th day of February in the year 2022. Boy, oh boy. The times. The source of your troubles is you. Live with the Tiger. Hi, how are you doing? You have to learn to chuckle about this sort of stuff. Because if you don't, you're going to take a gun to your head or you're going to swallow a whole box of pills. I mean, really. So you better develop a good sense of humor about, what's actually going on. So, where am I? Yeah, okay, this realm, this planet. Right. As always, let me express my love for each and every one of you. And don't worry, I would do the same thing if I was in a different realm, Uh, Whatever's happening right now, including what's going on this planet, is quite perfect, even though it certainly doesn't feel that way a lot of times. And that same macro, the universe of that divine consciousness where there is nothing that goes astray, is also reflected in the microcosm that is you, where nothing you are currently doing, no situation you're currently in, no state of mind is wrong. It's quite perfect. And that doesn't mean it's the best thing for you from your point of view. And that has to be something that we have to learn to accept. And we would call that faith. And we're going to discuss a number of things tonight, but maybe faith is a good place just to revisit for a minute or two, okay? And of course, what I have personally found in my varied religious experience in my deep past, as well as continually dealing from time to time with people still within religions, the vast majority of people don't actually possess faith. They possess belief. And belief is actually a real problem. And I'll explain why. So when you believe something, your deeper subconscious self knows that it's just a belief. And in trying to hold a belief valid, we immediately experience a subconscious fear that our belief is invalid. And that's why when someone questions a belief, the average person gets angry. They wouldn't get angry if they had a deeper level of knowing, which makes for faith. You see, I've never believed, there's that word. I've never believed that faith had anything to do with not knowing. I think that knowing and faith actually go hand in hand and can be interchangeable. Faith creates knowing as knowing creates faith. And the faith I'm talking about is that understanding that no matter what's happening right now, you live in a perfect creation. Now, that has nothing to do with our ability to see what we've chosen, one way or the other, to see what we've created and decide to create again. That really has nothing to do with it. And when we are willing to live our lives from a place of faith, the ego has no choice but to begin to go quiet. Because so much of what the ego does on a daily basis, to the tune of tens of thousands of thoughts, are all based around the idea, or sorry, not based around the idea, but based around the lack of faith, i.e., worry, concern, getting all nervous before a job interview, instead of understanding that no matter what, the best thing is going to happen. When you live a life from this place of what I have come to understand is perfect faith, that there is nothing that ruffles your feathers. Because instead of looking at it and not wanting it, instead of looking at it and trying to push it away and in the process have to get really close to it and blind yourself to life, you're immune to that normal, and normal's not the right word, you're immune to the average response that someone in our civilization gives. You're immune to that response because you have that faith to understand that this new situation, no matter what it appears to be, is offering a gift, as have all others, is offering an opportunity. We're going to look at an example, and yeah, it's kind of my favorite example right now because it's a damn important one, and that is the state of our climate. So I have 100% faith that this is exactly what needs to be happening. And the reasons for that are quite obvious. Now, at first you may say, well, wait a minute, Garen, you've already talked about the 10 million people that are dying due to air pollution alone right now every year. How does that jive with that? Well, as I've said before, I maintain the 2 points of view. So I see that the 10 million is a terrible loss. And my heart aches, and I'm filled with compassion for their families and loved ones. And yet at the same time, I'm able to see the sacrifice that those 10 million beings makes in order to offer us the opportunity to become more aware, to realize and decide and choose for ourselves that that can no longer happen, and then take the steps necessary. Why? For the betterment of all. And here's the deal. When we choose not to take those steps, all we're doing is leading ourselves to the slaughter in not 10 million, but in the hundreds of millions. So we can see quite easily how, the faith that everything is exactly the way it needs to be right now it's such an obvious thing. If we continue to try to go on the way we're going, really, what that faith represents, because I've spent a lot of time trying to articulate this in some way that makes the most sense. But when you think about it, it really comes down to a cause and effect relationship. In other words, The law in this physical universe is that there is always a push and a pull, an interchange and a balance of two forces. If you push in one direction, there is a pull in another. So I see what's happening on the planet, and I know that it is exactly what must be. That the natural push-pull, the natural cause, our actions here on the planet, and the effect, the changes we're seeing on the planet and the way it's beginning to affect us, are all part of that glorious process. To do what? To awaken us, to raise our consciousness, to see our interconnectivity with life, with all things, and begin to make the necessary changes, to consciously choose, not only as individuals, but as societies. So, how does faith play into what we're going to talk about tonight? Well, it plays directly into it. Because we are the source of all our own trouble. And that is not a condemnation, nor a damnation, nor any other nation, or a Dalmatian. It's not. It is a simple sentence of a profound truth within this physical realm, or as close as we can get to profound truth. And the reason for that is there is not a single aspect of this existence that you cannot, that you experience in any way that is not necessarily translated through the egoic sense of self. So before that egoic sense of self develops, i.e. when you're a little itty bitty baby, there is no inside or outside realization because that hasn't developed yet. That sense of self, that cloak that you're going to wear, the initial character has yet to be put on. The vessel is fully present and has no boundary. Now that's hard to explain, but trust me, you've been there. Because you've been a baby. Unless you were like me and then you were hatched and you still, same thing happened in the egg, it's okay. So the fact that every single thing you experience, every single thing that you experience requires interpretation. Now, if we think of that ego as kind of like a radio, because that's really what it is, it has a receiver and a transmitter, and if we were to take that radio and start bashing at the speaker a bit until we've distorted the speaker cone, or maybe put a rip in it, and start banging at the dials so maybe the frequency doesn't come in quite as clear as it used to. Maybe it's a tiny bit garbled now. We can easily see how the perceptions of the ego, the radio that we've just beat the crap out of, and by the way, if you're doing that to radios, seek help. Radios don't deserve that. Neither does anyone else. But the point is that the ego, in its perceptions of being beat to crap by life itself, begins to distort the messages. And we call that a shift in perception. So you have this little tiny egoic being that's just coming into its ego, this little young child, the egoic cloak it literally floats on around 2 years old, and that's when the terrible twos usually begin and carries on from there. But the perceptions themselves are always evolving and changing. And pending the experiences that the young egoic being has had, pending the response from those figures within its environment, such as the adults and other family members and its interactions within school, whatever the case may be, all contribute towards a certain perception. And that perception is the filter through which every experience, every event, everything is viewed. So when we run into someone who is angry and upset with us, we've literally been trained into perceiving that person has a problem with me, and therefore I must have done something. And perhaps you did do something. But that's not really the point at this stage. The point is the perceptions are going to guide not only the experience and the outcome of the experience, but whatever it is that you're going to think about the experience after, and therefore feel about it. So when someone comes to me and says, you made me feel this way, Garen, I say, that's quite impossible. You've chosen consciously or otherwise to feel this way, but I can't make you feel anything. And the discussion goes from there in a different direction if the person's open, but that's not really the overarching point here that we're looking at anyways. The point is that any perception that you have that paints yourself as having a negative experience is definitely the source of your own trouble. So if someone yells at you at the office, a coworker, maybe you spill their tea by mistake, and they have an overblown response. I've seen so many people who, in their perceptions, take that upon themselves, that they are somehow guilty and to blame. Now, you may be responsible for replacing the cup of tea, but you are certainly not to blame. And when you understand that, when your perceptions are not being guided blindly by the ego, when you have that new opened consciousness perception, if I spill someone's tea and they freak out on me, there's no Garen in the way to get upset. So all that freak out sort of goes by me, almost like a Matrix move in slow motion. It's like I just gently shift and turn my head, and as it comes by me, I look and I see, wow, this person's actually in a lot of pain. This tea's been a trigger. And now I have an opportunity to help them. To say, you know what, I'm going to replace that cup of tea. And, I got to say, you're getting unnaturally upset about a cup of tea. Do you want to talk about it? Clearly, there's something else that's going on. And I'm a really good listener. This is the power of our perceptions. Or a different person is there, and that person, in their perceptions, perceives an attack upon them after they've spilled the tea. They already feel bad, and now the person who owns the tea is freaking out on them, and they decide they're going to let loose and freak out right back at them too. And the next thing you know, you've got a saloon brawl over a cup of tea. Or worse yet, someone's shot dead in a parking lot. And it's happened over things just as foolish. What guides all of it? Only our perception. The only reality that exists is the one that you're creating in every single moment, consciously aware of it or otherwise. And this is why it is so important to move yourself away from the idea of blaming anything or anyone outside of yourself as being the reason why you're feeling the way you feel, or acting the way you're acting, or thinking the way you're thinking. Because when you do that, you're selling yourself out. You're literally taking the unlimited personal power that you came here with and scooping it in giant bucketfuls over to someone else and saying, here you go, here's all my power for you. If you disapprove of me, I'm not going to feel good about myself. Here's some more power. If you don't like what I'm wearing, I'm not going to feel good about myself. Here's some more power. If dinner wasn't quite the way you liked it, cook it your damn self. No, because you'd never say that. I'm really sorry. I'll do better next time. Now I feel bad about dinner. Here's some more power. We keep giving it away and giving it away and giving it away until we literally feel powerless, which is not our state of being. And in that powerless state, we realize that not only have we lost our true selves, but we have also lost track of who we perceive that we are as an egoic form, because we're too damn busy trying to be what everyone else wants us to be. No matter what's going on in your life right now, if you are suffering, and by suffering, I'm not talking about body pain, because that is pain, okay, and there is a profound difference. But if you are suffering, which has anything to do with the mind, over anything that's happened with your life, you have the power and the choice right now, to perceive it in a different way, to choose to look at it differently. And you know what? If you can't figure out how to look at it differently, send me a message and say, Garen, here's what's going on. How do I look at this in a way that I can deal with it? Now, some people are going to say, well, wait a minute, isn't that sort of being fake? Because it's truly nasty what this person's done to me, and now I'm supposed to make it into a positive, fluffy teddy bear sort of deal. I'm not telling you to do that at all. I'm not asking you to do that at all. What I'm suggesting to you is you could instead realize that their attack on you that you perceive is not an attack on you, but an energetic cry for help that was coming from them. And that it wasn't personal, you just happened to be standing there at the time that the straw broke the camel's back. We have that power. You have that power right now. It doesn't, and you know, I know all about body pain, but the last thing I ever do is add suffering over body pain on top of body pain. So, Kelly says it probably at least once a week, maybe twice a week. She'll say, no one would look at you and ever think that you have a busted up spine and that you've had half the bones in your body broken and dropped on your skull too many times. I mean, no one would even guess that sort of thing. And I don't make it a big deal. I don't talk about it. I don't lend it my attention. And I don't create any suffering. My perception regarding my body is all one of gratitude that the damn thing is in one piece at all. That I'm not even supposed to be able to walk. So every minute I run and climb and kayak and do yoga is nothing but gratitude for the gift that just keeps on giving that this body has been. That's a perceptive choice. That's what this is all about tonight. It's not to judge you based on your troubles, but we should talk a little bit about judgment and a little bit about condemnation. Because when we get angry at someone else and judge them or condemn them for their behavior, we have to be very aware that what we're getting angry about is something that subconsciously is still part of me. And that over there is a trigger. And as you've probably seen posts to this regard before, but in truth, those things that trigger you are also wonderful gifts. They can be your best teachers to make you aware and let you know to start digging deeply within yourself. Now, this is also a big one to understand. So how do we look at the world then, Garen? I get it. How do you look at the world if you're not allowed? And of course you can, but it doesn't do any good. But, if you should not judge and if you should not condemn because all you're doing is reflecting things about yourself, well, I would say go ahead and do it then until you understand what it is inside yourself and then deal with that. But it's in understanding the difference in learning to observe the world around you as opposed to believe that it's all happening to you. Understand that you're simply part of this. An amazing part of it, a one-of-a-kind part, but a part nevertheless. Every petal on the flower is valuable, and yet they're all petals. Each one's unique, yet they're all petals. So what am I really talking about here? I'm talking about the ability to observe life. Now, where observation is observation would be, my dear friend, you're drinking too much alcohol. That's an observation. That's it. I don't feel anything but love and compassion for my friend. There's no difference before me saying that and after me saying that. They're not less than they were. They're not more than they were. There's no pity. There's the same love and compassion. But a total removal of myself from any sort of feeling because I have no thoughts about it. Why? Because in order to judge, in order to condemn, you have to add thoughts into that mix. Now, as soon as you think that that person is somehow less, Ah, you poor dear, suffering with alcoholism. That's judgment. And you may say, well, that's not necessarily a wrong judgment. And I'm not saying it's necessarily a wrong judgment. But the concept that they're a poor dear in the process is, in my judgment, a wrong judgment. Because every journey is to be respected. That doesn't mean you don't help people. But it means that when you observe, you be very wary that you don't let your observation fall into judgment and condemnation. And should that occur, you take the time after the event or experience or interaction is over to sit and try and find in yourself the seeds of those things that set you off. That's really about it. That's all I got tonight. The one thing I will say is that, things are simply accelerating climate-wise this year, going forward into the spring. We need to really be able to rely on each other, and we need to be willing to come together and work together in ways that humanity has never experienced in the modern world. And for now, I'm just going to leave you to contemplate that. That's it. That's all. Much love. Namaste. Have a beautiful Monday night if you're here on planet Earth. And we'll see you again very soon.